All right, so the deadlift. This is where the meat starts for me. I'm an okay squatter. Well, maybe build better than okay. I'm just an okay bencher. It's really the rest period between the squat and the deadlift. But deadlift is where I turn it on. If everything else is going crappy in that day, normally my deadlift is on point. That's when I know it's going to be a good deadlift day. Otherwise, what's the whole point of being there? There is no point of being there, right? So the deadlift. Today I'm going to go over basic stances, sumo, conventional, your basic setup for those, how you get in the right position to optimize your leverages, and obviously it's very individualistic. Common mistakes, and then your programming and assistance work that you would do to help bring up some of those weaknesses. No? Oh, there. Wait, I can fix this. I skipped one. Sorry. Oh, there. Who should deadlift? Everyone should deadlift. It's the foundation for our lives. We have stuff on the ground, we pick it up. Kids do that. Old ladies do that. You do that when you get something off the bottom shelf at Walmart, the cat food, whatever it is. The basic movement of bending over and picking it up is the basics for everyone. Athletes especially. Athletes are training, whether it be a baseball player, a soccer player, obviously powerlifting, CrossFit, whatever, are multi-joint movements. One of the biggest bang for your bucks that you can get for multi-joint movements is the deadlift, squat and deadlift. People debate that. I'll let you guys determine that on your own. But those two are the biggest bang for your buck. If you're not going to do anything else, you squat and you deadlift, you're going to get stronger. It's that paramount. So everyone should deadlift. That's the whole point. But which stance? It depends. If you're just starting out, if you're having clients who are just starting out, they've never deadlifted before ever, I would say go conventional. It has the most wiggle room. It's a little less technical than sumo. It seems to be a little bit more natural. So if you're just starting out, start conventional. But you can do both. And actually, I recommend that you do both, because typically one will bring up weaknesses that you're probably seeing in the other one anyways. A lot of times conventional lifters, great strength off the floor, but they get it here, and then air brakes kick on, glue, whatever, I don't know, magnets, they just can't seem to lock it out. Well, you know what, in sumo, you use a lot more of your butt, and you use a lot more in that lockout. So your sumos typically don't fail at lockout unless they get it ahead of them. Where they fail is getting it off the floor. If I can rip it off the floor, if I can just start it, 9 times out of 10 I'm going to finish it. But that's opposite with conventional. Conventional, they rip it off the floor and then they can't lock it out. So if you do both, you can kind of correct the weaknesses of the other lift. Your conventional, your typical, is going to be bigger people. Statistically, that's the case. You have Rich is a great example. He's a conventional puller. He's a big hipped guy. Big guys tend to be conventional pullers. People with long arms, use those things. They're long ropes, use them. You don't have to go nearly as far if you got long arms. So typically long arms are going to be a conventional puller. Short little Tyrannosaurus Rex arms like myself, we're sumo. I need to get close to that. I need to decrease my range of motion as much as possible. I'm going to be bent over anyways because I got little T-Rex arms. It's just general guideline, going to be better for sumo. Conventional also works a strong back. So if you naturally have a strong back, say you've been doing lots and lots and lots of back squats, you work your posterior chain, you're more than likely going to be stronger at a conventional pull. If you're an ollie lifter or a CrossFitter and you do a bunch of front squats, you're more than likely going to be better off as a sumo because sumo uses a little bit more quad. These are guidelines. There are going to be exceptions to every rule, but in general, this is where you go. But like I said, takeaway out of this one is use both. Get good at both. Setup. How do you set up? Where do you put your feet? How far? How narrow? How do we even get this ball rolling? Well, Vince, you can come up here. so that way I don't get into hitting the mic and messing things up. Conventional foot placement. If everyone can see where Vince is at, you're going to start about shoulder width apart. The best way to find out where your exact groove is to start someplace, and if that feels weird or you just don't even know, move it out a ½ inch. Move it out a ½ inch. Move it in a ½ inch, but be meticulous about it. Start at a place, move the next session, move again, the next session. Don't be doing this, oh I'm going to be here, now I'm going to be here, now I'm going to try here, because you're never going to find that sweet spot. Incremental changes. Nothing is ever a big change. It's usually little adjustments. Typically you start shoulder width apart. Bigger guys are going to be a little bit wider in general. You see Brian Shaw, strong man, not really powerlifting, but he still does deadlifts. He's like out here. Well, he's a big guy. His shoulders are like this wide, so his base is going to be wide. Big hips tend to be a little bit wider. Smaller people tend to be a little bit narrower. Exception to the rule, Tara Oravak. She's a pretty big girl. I think she's a 181, maybe 198, not quite sure. She's literally like an inch apart. I mean, it is so narrow. But so anything that I say today, you have to take with a grain of salt, that there are going to be exceptions, that you might find that your body doesn't work that way. You have to find what works for you. As far as how close the bar is to you, typically bigger people are going to have it out just a little bit more. Smaller people are going to have it a little closer, but you still want it over the middle of your foot. You have it over your toes, put it over your toes, and lift it up. What's going to happen? Go ahead and lift it up. What's going to happen to him? All of his weight's going to be forward, right? It's going to be hard to stay back. If you have it too far back, what's going to happen? Can you have it too far back? You can. You can have it too far back because your balance can be off. Typically, that's not going to be an issue. But anytime that you move the bar, anything from straight up and down to any kind of this is inefficient. Because you're fighting gravity and gravity's going straight down. If you have it too far back, you can get off balance and not be able to get in the right position. You start with it too far and you bend down, it's going to push it out forward anyways. Why do all that? Just have it start over your midfoot. Then obviously, if you find that it works a little bit closer to you, then go with it. I'm not telling you don't. And your toes are typically going to be flared out a little bit, not straight ahead. Typically. You're going to be able to get a little into position better when your feet are flared out a little bit. Now for sumo, your width is going to depend on the individual. We've all seen Ed Cohn videos where he has that like hybrid sumo, which is a little bit narrower of a sumo stance. Wide sumo, go ahead and get wide. The advantage to having an extremely wide sumo is obviously decreased range of motion. The disadvantage is if you don't have the mobility to get there. If you can't get down, just lower yourself down like a squat. If you can't reach that bar, you're probably too wide. Either you're going to have to work on opening up your hips, which would be a good thing anyways, or you're going to have to move those feet in. So go ahead and move into your normal position there, Vince. So he's a little on the narrower side. And you're going to usually start with the bar touching your shins. You don't want it out ahead. Unlike with the conventional, because with conventional you're bending your legs and your legs are going forward. With sumo, your legs don't really go forward, so they're not going to push the bar away from you. You want that bar as close to your shins and as close to your body as you can get. And that's typically where you start. Now, foot position on sumo can be anywhere from fairly angled like his. Ed Cohn in the picture when I started the presentation, I mean, he's out like this. If you can do that and maintain stability at the top, you're going to have a lot more power off the bottom. Caveat to that, you get it up here and you're dancing on ice skates. You're not going to be able to hold your balance. If you can, then more power to you. But typically, I go a little bit more narrower where my feet, so that way I push on the outside of my feet and I use that as balance. So that's going to be highly individualistic as well. So you're going to have to try to play around. If something doesn't quite feel right, you're like, well, my hips feel fine, but I'm wibble wobbly. I get a little bit more power with my toes pointed forward. That's going to be one of those individual things again. So to start the lift, what do? You hear the term, pull the slack out of the bar. What does this mean? Well, if you just bend down and pull without pulling the slack out of the bar, just pull it. What happens? Well, the bar has to travel just this little much within the weight that it can throw you out of position. You need to stay tight. And when you just jerk it, you don't stay tight. And staying tight is probably the most important part of all three of the lifts, is staying tight. Rich said it 5 million times. Stay tight, stay tight, stay tight. It's the truth. Whether it be squat, bench, or deadlift, staying tight will decrease your risk of injury. So you set your body, you set your foot position wherever you need to. You're going to take a breath and you're going to hold it. You're going to brace your abs, your upper back, and your lower back. Everything needs to be nice and tight. And then you're going to pull your hips into the bar and use the weight as a counterbalance. So the first part, before you even pull the bar, are all of those things. You need to stay tight, you need to take big air, you need to get that upper back tight, you need to keep that lower back tight, and you need to squeeze your glutes and get everything ready to just yank it up. So that's pulling the slack out, especially using your weight as a counterbalance. That's my technique. If it doesn't resonate with you, okay, we'll figure out something else. I like to use the hips as a loading mechanism. Can you show me what I mean by that? Whether it be sumo, conventional, I don't care. So what I mean by that is, see how he doesn't just bend down and squat the bar up? No, just squat it up, like without loading the hips. Now bend down and load your hips. The loading the hips allows the hips to get closer to the bar and use that power, that movement, to kind of get the bar moving. You knew what I meant. Not really literally rolling, that would be bad. That'd be opposite of what we want to do. So the hips kind of load it, and that's what I see a lot of. Once you get past the beginner stage, I mean, that's like, okay, that'll help you. It's kind of like on a bench press. Yes, leg drive is important, but obviously if you can't bring it down to your chest and bring it back up, you're not going to be able to bench. Let's incorporate leg drive once we get this stable. Well, let's incorporate hips once we get standing up with it stable. Baby steps. So then the next part of a deadlift is actually getting the bar moving. So we're all tight. We have our big air. We have everything tight. What do? We lead with the chest. That chest needs to be up. If you're bent over and your chest is down, and go ahead and lift. That looks okay. I mean, he's doing the lift, right? Go ahead and now lead with your chest. That looks a lot better. Why does it look better? Because he's using the stronger muscles to move the weight. Yeah, better leverages. You can lift with your back, basically a stiff leg or a straight back. You can do it. You're not going to be able to do 1 rep max, or your 1 rep max is going to be 80% of what a real 1 rep max should be, because you have crappy leverages. So you want to lead with your chest. For conventional, we hear this all the time, push your feet through the floor, or push the floor away from the bar. Same thing. But instead of thinking about moving the bar up, if you think about pushing the feet through, your core tends to stay in a little bit better position. So that's the cue I tend to use, is pushing the feet through the floor. I actually use it for squat too. I like it for squat because as you're going down, as you're coming up, if you push your feet through the floor, it gets the hips involved a little bit faster than if you just think of squatting the weight up. then you're like this, and then you have to go like this, and it's all disjunct. You want it to be a nice fluid motion. Same thing as with the deadlift. You want it to be a nice fluid motion. You want to get those hips involved. With sumo, instead of pushing the feet through the floor, which I still do, and I'm a sumo puller, I still think about pushing the feet through the floor, but I think about pushing the feet through the floor and spreading the floor. I'm not just pushing down, I'm also spreading out. That helps to keep the glutes activated, that helps to keep your quads tight and keep you in the right position. So your first part of, from the floor up to your knees, just go up to your knees, is all a push. You're lifting straight up and down. And you're fighting to keep your back in position. Do it again. Straight up. And see how, right now, where he's at, up to your knees, this is all staying the same. His back is not doing anything. There it does, but when he's down at his knees, this is all just holding. Isometric contraction. It's just holding it there. It's just bracing. That's all your back is doing. That's why we call the first part of the deadlift the push, because you're pushing your feet through the floor. It's all legs and butt. You're pushing down. Back is staying tight. You're keeping your core tight. You're keeping your air in. Then it's the pull from the knees. Now with sumo, it's going to be a little bit below the knees. With conventional, it's going to be above the knees-ish. You're going to push those hips through. So go ahead and start at your knees. Hold it. And now here, push your hips through. Your back is actually pulling at this point. This is where your back actually does something other than just hold itself. So from the second half of the lift, from the knees up, we have your glutes firing to push your hips through. If you think about pushing your hips through, what automatically happens is your glutes tighten up, back through. That's the lockout. Common mistakes. We didn't even talk about this. Grip. For a sumo puller, your grip is going to be typically a little wider, or narrower than a conventional pull. Why is that? Because your knees are in the way. If you're a conventional, go ahead and go down to where your conventional is.
Right here.
Yeah, just wherever you go. See how much wider his arms are. They're about an inch and a half away from the smooth. Now get into your conventional. Or sumo, I'm sorry, yeah. See where his hands are now. He's like right up against the smooth. Why do we do this? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? No? Because when you're conventional, your legs are in the way. So you can't put your hands in the same spot. And if you try, go ahead and try. I mean, you can. You're not going to be very efficient at it. Oh, right there. Look at what happens. This is all rounded over. You can't quite lock it out. And that's exactly what happens. You have your hands too narrow. It might feel good at first, but then you get to the top and you ain't going to be able to lock it out. You're going to be stuck, especially when you get up to 95% and above. You're going to be stuck. That's a heck of a shrug. Your hands are too wide. That's a snatch grip deadlift. There's a time and a place for that, but on the platform's not one of them. That is increasing your range of motion. Well, you want to make it harder on yourself? You don't get any bonus points. You don't go, you know, that was a really great stiff leg snatch grip deadlift that you did. You get 2 extra pounds. No one ever does that. It's not part of the whole thing. What kind of goes along with having your hands real close to you is a rounded back. I see this on a lot of times in beginners. Go ahead and do a crappy deadlift form. Crappier. Come on, you can do it. Yeah. Rich, you want to come up and show us a crappy deadlift form? That was his crappy form. He's still a pretty good deadlifter even with his crappy form. Am I going to have to show you a crappy form? Jeez. Okay, crappy form. You're going to keep your hips high and you're going to bend. You're going to see this and you're going to see people going like this. And you're like, oh my God, you know, or, you know, go to our chiropractor because you're going to need it, right? I mean, I see kids who get into powerlifting, and I think it's great for kids to get into powerlifting, but I think it's great for kids to get into powerlifting if they're taught the right form. If you're bending your spine 9 ways from Sunday, you're not getting anything out of this. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to have to go to the chiropractor. You're going to have back problems. It's going to be no good. So a rounded back, yes, there are some great deadlifters who do a rounded back. Leave that for the elite. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about basic beginners, basic movements. You're not going to want a rounded back. You want to kind of keep it, you don't need to super arch it, but you need to keep it tight and neutral. It's going to be healthier. You're going to have better gains. Hyperextending the lockout. So once you do get it up, there you go. Knees come forward, they bend, and you're like this. You don't get any more, no gold stars or bonus points for going like this. I'm really engaging my glutes though. You just need to be straight up and down. You do this, and that's when you do get shear on your spine. You do this, your knees will bend. It'll be a red light anyways. What's the point of that? So that's another problem I see. Squatting the weight up. A lot of people think that, oh, well, a deadlift is kind of like a squat just on the ground, right? I mean, it makes sense. So they get their hips way too low. It looks pretty. Go ahead and do that again. It looks like, oh man, yeah, that looks pretty. Not enough weight to really show. But what happens when it gets heavier is those hips rise anyways. So what's the point in starting 3 inches below where you're going to start lifting the weight anyways? You're just wasting energy. It's not a squat, it's a deadlift. Opposite of that is true as well. Huge mistake. And that's keeping your hips too high. It's a great accessory exercise. It's called stiff leg deadlift. It really gets those hams and glutes, but for 1 rep max on a platform, I wouldn't recommend it. It's not going to be the best form. And then we already went over what happens if you don't pull the slack out of the bar. Do a Roy pull. He's not here, so he can't defend himself. And we've all heard, oh, just grip and rip it, right? Grip and rip. Yeah, what happens to your biceps, Rich, when you don't pull the slack out of the bar? Man, I got lots of darts.
Your orthopedic surgeon gets Porsche.
Yeah. So the whole point of pulling the slack out is not only to make it a more efficient lift, it's also to make it a safer lift. You have bent arms, these little muscles, however pretty they may be, I can't curl 400 pounds. I can hold 400 pounds, but I can't curl 400 pounds. So you don't want to start like this, because that's disaster waiting to happen. So what's the best way to troubleshoot the deadlift? Do you video from the front? Do you video from the angle? Or do you video from the side? I propose the side. Why is that?
Look at this profile leverages.
That, and you can see what the bar's doing. If we know that a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, if gravity is the force vector pulling down, we want to go straight up. Any movement this way is inefficient. You're going to have some movement this way on the bench because our shoulders get in the way. So you're going to have a little bit of a J. But on the squat and the deadlift, the closer that you can keep to straight up and down, the better off you will be. And if that bar, like on my squat, it ain't pretty, it goes an inch forward at the bottom and then it comes back. I'm not real proud of it, but that's just the way it is. I'm working on it. For the deadlift, the same thing. If it starts out forward, you're just wasting movement. If it goes up and then it goes out, you're wasting movement and making it a lot harder on you. So you want straight up and down. Because when it comes to 95% and above, especially with sumo, because I think with conventional you have a little bit more wiggle room, you can muscle through some stuff, you can muscle through, oh, that got a little out of place, let me get it back into place. 1/8 of an inch can be the difference of going home with a world record and going home with not. Success and failure can be that much of a difference. Having that bar slip forward just a little bit, you can't lock it out. that's it. It's all about inches and ounces. And each time that you have some variance in that, you're setting yourself up.
Wow, that was awesome, Jen. Thank you so much for all that great deadlift information. Now, if you like that, you're gonna really like this, the 7 worst testosterone killers. It's a free report just for you. Enter your email and we can send you that free report. Now, if you're on a mobile device and can't click that box, check the video description below, that top link, criticalbench.com/bonus-video. That's the link you want to click so we can send you that free report. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and leave some comments or questions for us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.